Hey, Liz.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Jeez. Scared the living daylights. Okay, you're over there. I'll be over here.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Liz is here.
Liz is hiding now.
There she is.
Hi, Liz. Hi.
Here,
Lynn. Yep.
present and accounted for.
Click. Accounted for. Mm.
Rabbi and I are switching seats.
Yes, just trading things up a little bit.
Oh, I see. I
And in the
wondered.
back, we have the lovely sound of children
Yes.
davening.
Yes, they are.
Oh, are they davening? Oh, yeah. Really?
Yes.
That's nice.
Beautiful tones.
Is that the Chabad camp?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
Gone Israel.
Yeah, in Israel.
But I think now they call it Gone Izzy.
See,
Okay.
We are in chapter 8.
Yes.
We
I believe
are,
we finished the menorah and we're
We-
on, yeah,
so
the
now we're at
5.
verse 5, Pasuk Hey.
hey, which one of us read last, Lois? Did I read?
I didn't. Go ahead, Lynn. I mean, if you want me to, I will. Okay.
No, I checked glasses. I can read.
Okay,
That's
so
correct.
you are going to have a big read.
Oh, Lois.
We'll, okay.
You're
We'll
gonna
split it up.
read to the end of this chapter. So you're going to start at Pasuk Hey at verse 5, and you're going to read through this section of the Levim.
It's not that long, really.
No,
It's-
whatever, feels longer.
Yeah.
So do you want to give it a read? Okay, and we'll make sure everybody can hear you as you're reading. Okay.
So I'm reading to 23.
Can you hear Liz right now? Can you hear her?
Yeah.
Speak again.
Hashem spoke to Moses, saying, "Take the Levites from among the children of Israel." I won't be able to read them if I do that. Children of Israel, and purify them. So shall you do to them to purify them. Sprinkle upon them water of purification.
Here, come here. You come closer to this. I'll move over here.
Where are we reading from? Sorry, I joined late.
Chapter 8, verse 5. In Bamidbar, chapter 8, verse.
Oh, now I'm right close to
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, sprinkle upon them water of purification, and let them pass a razor over their entire flesh, and let them immerse their garments, and they shall become pure. They shall take a young bull and its meal offering, fine flour mixed with oil, and a second young bull shall you take as a sin offering. You shall bring the Levites before the tent of meeting, and you shall gather together the entire assembly of children of Israel. You shall bring the Levites before Hashem, and the children of Israel shall lean their hands upon the Levites. Aaron shall wave the Levites as a wave service before Hashem from the children of Israel, and they shall remain to perform the service of Hashem. The Levites shall lean their hands upon the head of the bowls. You shall make one a sin offering and one an elevation offering to Hashem, to provide atonement for the Levites. You shall stand the Levites before Aaron and before his sons, and wave them as a wave offering before Hashem. So shall you separate the Levites from among the children of Israel, and the Levites shall remain mine. Therefore, the Levites shall come to serve the tent of meeting. You shall purify them, and you shall wave them as a wave service. For presented are they to me from among the children of Israel. In place of the first issue of every womb, the firstborn of every one of the children of Israel, have I taken them to myself. For every firstborn of the children of Israel become mine, of man and livestock. Don't say a word, Lois. On the day I struck every firstborn in the land of Egypt,
Never mind. Go ahead.
I sacrificed them for myself. I took the Levites in place of every firstborn among the children of Israel. Then I assigned the Levites to be presented to Aaron and his sons from among the children of Israel, to perform the service of the children of Israel in the tent of meeting, and to provide atonement for the children of Israel, so that they will not be a plague among the children of Israel when the children of Israel approach the sanctuary. Moses, Aaron, and the entire assembly of the children of Israel did to the Levites according to everything that Hashem had commanded Moses about the Levites. So did the children of Israel do to them. The Levites purified themselves and immersed their garments, and Aaron waved them as a wave service before Hashem. And Aaron provided atonement for them to purify them. Afterwards, the Levites came to perform their service in the tent of meeting before Aaron and before his sons, as Hashem had commanded Moses concerning the Levites. So they did for them. Am I stopping there or am I going?
You keep on going.
Hashem spoke to Moses, saying, "This shall apply to the Levites from 25 years of age and up. He shall join the legion of the service of the tent of meeting. From 50 years age, he shall withdraw from the legion of work and no longer work. He shall minister with his brethren in the tent of meeting to safeguard the charge, but work shall he not perform. So shall you do to the Levites concerning their charge."
Okay.
All right, so we have,
Do you want to change seats again?
all right, maybe. Musical chairs. So we have off and on focused on the Levim from the beginning of Bamidbar, and come back to this notion that the Levim who are going to function as service in the Beis Hamikdash, they are going to be service to the service. They are going to be servants to the servants. The Kohanim are themselves service in the Beis Hamikdash, and the Levim are going to be given to the Kohanim to help them with their service. Most of this work on behalf of the Kohanim happens in the desert when they are moving from one location to another. They have to pack up the Mishkan and the various vessels, and they have to transport them. And we saw how each section of the Levim had a different charge when it came to that. When it eventually comes to the service in the Beis Hamikdash, they are not necessarily going to be alongside the Kohanim every step of the way. The Kohanim are going to actually do the sacrifices and maintain the menorah and the showbreads. The Levim are their responsibilities are guarding the Mishkan and then eventually guarding the Beit Hamikdash. So there's going to be special guard posts. Altogether in the Beit HaMikdash, there were 24 guard posts. 21 of them were manned by Leviim, 3 by Kohanim. They are sort of like the beefeaters. They're the honor guard for the Beit HaMikdash. They also are the choir and the symphony that plays during the sacrifices, during the morning offerings. The Leviim sing. I don't remember if they also sing for the afternoon offering, the everyday offerings, but they do for the morning offerings. They also sing. We saw that they sing Hallel on Pesach when the on technically what's called Erev Pesach, the day before Pesach, when the Pesach offering is brought. So they have a choir and symphony during that time, and many other times they are performing. In fact, it seems like there are several Tehillim, psalms, that were composed to be played by the Leviim and sung by the Leviim in the Beis HaMikdash. Certainly Hallel seems to be one of those. Hallel becomes part of Tehillim, part of the Jewish songbook, as it were. And they seem to have been composed for the purpose of being performed by the Leviim in the Beis HaMikdash. And it seems like there are others as well. Certainly you can see from many of the psalms that they were composed to be sung with musical accompaniment, but it seems like some of them were actually designed to be sung that way in the Beis HaMikdash by the Leviim. So once the Beis HaMikdash is in a fixed position, or even once the Mishkan, the tabernacle, was in a fixed position, the tabernacle was in Shiloh for like 369 years in one location. Once it's in one location, the work of the Leviim seems to be limited as far as their daily work goes. Again, like I mentioned, guarding and singing and playing music. Although in the book of Shmuel, when Shmuel, the first couple chapters of the book of Shmuel, of Samuel, we read about Hannah, who wanted to have a son, and then when she eventually gets a son, which she views as a gift from God, she had made an agreement that her son would serve in the Beis HaMikdash. What did it mean that Shmuel would serve in the Beis HaMikdash? Shmuel is a Levi. So how did Shmuel serve in the Beis HaMikdash? So it could be that there were some there was some menial kind of work done in the parts of the Mishkan where non-Kohanim could go, and he was doing some of that work. It could be he helped Eli's sons in some regard when they were doing whatever they were doing. Certainly not the criminal stuff they were doing, but the other stuff they were doing. It also does seem like part of his purpose there was to be trained by Eli as a prophet. So that because Eli himself is not only the Kohen Gadol, but he is a prophet, and it seems like that is part of his training. At least we get to read some of that when Shmuel is lying down at night and he hears a voice calling his name, and he goes back to Eli, and Eli said, "It wasn't me. Go back and listen." So Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan suggests that that Shmuel is being trained by Eli for prophecy. You could hear voices, you could have visions, and those are not necessarily prophecy. If you're having prophecy, it's a very specific genre, and you need to be mentored, first of all, to recognize that that's what's happening, but even how to prepare for prophecy, what to do after you've had prophecy. So it could be that this is part of what she hoped for in the training. It's not clear, because again, once the Mishkan becomes fixed, there really doesn't seem to be a lot of everyday work for the Levim to do. The Rambam, when he talks about the responsibility of the Levim, he talks about them also as teachers to the people and as judges, because since they're freed of having land, they don't have to work the land on a daily basis. They have more time in their day, so they have more opportunity to study. And once they've studied, they are more likely to be the teachers. You also see them as judges in the Sanhedrin. The Torah later on in Deuteronomy mentions that you're going to have questions and you're going to want to go to, and it mentions Kohanim and Levim as people that you would go to resolve your questions. And there the commentary suggests that the reason that it identifies them as Kohanim and Levim is because Kohanim and Levim would have been very suitable candidates to work on the Sanhedrin. Again, they are most likely the intelligentsia of the people, just because they have the opportunity to sit to study for many years and to develop the expertise required to be able to teach at a high level, and then to be able to make the decisions after somebody asks a question. So it could be that even later on, at the time when the Mishkan is fixed or when the Beis Hamikdash is built, it could be that they had more responsibilities than first meets the eye. And it could be they did some menial work. They certainly were involved in the choir and the symphony and in guarding around the Mishkan. But it's also very likely that they are part of the Sanhedrin. What number, how many of them, I don't know, but a good number of them might have been members of the Sanhedrin or preparing to be members of the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin itself is housed, once there's a Beit HaMikdash, the Sanhedrin is housed on the grounds of the Beit HaMikdash. So that would have been another place you would have found them. It's also interesting because Shmuel is also a judge, it appears. There's a word in that appears quite often. In fact, it's the name of a whole section, a whole book of Nach. It's called Shoftim. And Shoftim are typically translated as judges. And there were all sorts of people that were Shoftim. These were leadership positions. The assumption is that as part of their leadership position, they judged the people. And so you have the book of Shoftim, the book of Judges. There are those who suggest that that word may not only mean judge. It may also mean leader. It may be a term like sheikh, S-H-E-I-K. In other words, that you might be a leader of the tribe when it says shofet. The reason you might want to say that here is because there are certain people that are identified as shoftim, but they don't seem to be scholars. Like Samson. Samson does not seem to be a scholar, but he's identified as a shofet. Yiftach doesn't seem to be a scholar. Gidon doesn't seem to be a scholar, but these are people that are identified as shoftim. Is it possible that a shofet means somebody who is more of a leader and not technically a judge? That is a possibility. It's also possible that we have misread these characters and that there's more to them than first meets the eye. There's a guy who wrote a book about Shimshon, about Samson, with that assumption, that since he's called a judge, that means there's aspects of his character that are not obvious from reading the story, where he seems to be more like a mercenary than a judge. But so he argued that these stories, and we know this, that the stories don't include every aspect of the character of somebody. They are not talking about every day of their lives, every month of their lives, every year of their lives. They're not talking about all the various activities of their lives. They're focused on certain stories because those stories have meaning to us and are going to be useful in future generations. It's not necessarily history of them. So this person wanted to argue, clearly there are other aspects of Shimshon that do not that are not, okay. There are other aspects of Shimshon that are perhaps not as obvious. And one of them was that he was a judge. All right, so I bring all of this up because Shmuel is a judge. And we're told that he not only was he a judge, but he was a circuit court judge. He would travel from town to town, and in the sort of middle of the country, he would travel from place to place and hold court, and people who had issues would come and he would help resolve their issues based on the law. So this also seems to have been part of his training. Eli was also a shofet. So it seems like Shmuel is also receiving training for that. Again, you could say that the training to be a prophet and the training to be a judge are outside of his role as Levi. Or you could say that his training to be a prophet and a judge are in keeping with the general notion of the Levi, because the Levi is devoted to service of God in all different ways. And all right, so there's your overview of the Levi. A couple detail. Yeah, was there anything?
I have a
Yeah.
couple questions. First of all, when does this ceremony take place other than this first time? In other words, when a Levi turns 25, do they have to go through all this or not? I just wonder if this purification process, or is it a one-time thing for the Levies that carry throughout all? And I want to know how you wave a Levi. I just, pick them up and wave them, or what do you do?
Yes, so weirdly, it does seem like that might have been the case, that they actually did pick them up and wave them. Exactly how they do it, but apparently they held them in their arms and waved them. Again, I don't know what it would look like in person, but the waving did seem to be an actual waving of the person. The question you ask about whether this was done with every Levi once they're 25, that's an excellent question, and I do not know the answer to that question. So the question on the that Lois is asking is, was this a one-time thing that happened, that's sort of the dedication of the Mishkan, or is it something that happened to each individual? At that time, it would be a lot of them because it's the first time, but is it something that happened to each individual afterwards? I don't know the answer to that. My gut leans to the fact that it was a one-time thing, but yeah,
that's the way it looks.
right, it is my gut, but I don't. I don't know that for absolute certain.
And
So
Rabbi, I didn't know that Shmuel was a Levi. The reason, David does that Haftorah, and it's always Ephrathi. So I thought he was an Ephraim. I didn't realize he was a Levi.
Right. remember now.
I'm sorry, maybe
All
it's
right.
just inferred
Right,
that
right.
he's, yeah.
No, yeah, so I'm trying to see. The language is always Vanar Shmuel Meshores as Hashem Lifnei Eli. So God. All right, so let me see, how do we know that? One last thing here.
So Ephrathi is just where he lived, I guess.
Right, I mean, I'm just trying to see what the source is of it. There's a
Strength and stamina that they needed for Moses and Aaron to lift cattle with 22,000 Levites on a single day.
how many?
22,000.
Yeah, that when that happens, you gotta take a breath. For instance, there's midrashim that say that Shmuel was a descendant of Korah. Right. But how do they? Let's see. How do they know he was a Levi? How do they know he was a Levi?
We'll do research. Don't,
Right.
don't, oh, okay.
Right. Okay. But one of the there are midrashim that say that Korach saw that his descendants would be great leaders of Israel, and so one of them is Shmuel. And up here, like in this, there's a thing here called Zisel. Shmuel Hanavi was the son of a Levite prophet Elkanah and the teacher and anointer of King David. That's just like a short little blurb that somebody has, but they, for some reason, how do we know? One last thing I'm going to do here. How do we know? Oh, here, 1 second. Shmuel was from the tribe of Levi, successfully managed to get the entire nation to accept. This is outorah.org. All right. Let's see how we know it. How do we know it? I was looking back there, but it does talk about him serving there. It talks about her making a little outfit for him that he wore while he was serving there. But good question.
Oh, maybe
yeah.
then it's assumed that he must have been in order for him to serve there.
Right, except even as a Levi, what did he do? Whatever he did as a Levi, he probably could have done as a Yisrael. Because what was what if it was menial stuff, you would think a Yisrael could do the menial stuff too. If it doesn't sound like it's talking about singing or guarding, but yeah. Those other features of his life do fit a kind of general training that somebody might have as a Levi. But would you characterize that as serving before them at the Mishkan? I don't know. Okay, amongst some of the other data that we are privy to in this section is the fact that they would shave themselves entirely. That also, I wonder if that was carried forward, even if the waving of them may not have been. I feel like the shaving of them might have been carried forward at least once at the beginning of their service, but their entire body is shaved. There are a couple of people who get their hair shaved. The Metzora is one of the people whose body is entirely shaved at the beginning and the end of their purification rites. Their body is entirely shaved. And the Levi, his body's entirely shaved. The Nazir, his head is shaved. So those are three cases that are often compared in the Gemara with each other because there's a mitzvah to shave them. But again, I'm not sure if this was only something that happened at the original dedication of the Levim, or is this something that happened every time Levim came of age and started their service? Also, like in verse 10, when it says, and all of Israel placed their hands on the Levim, what does it mean? I mean, or that the people of Israel placed their hands on the Levim, you assume that this means representatives of the people. Yeah, and then we have that waving that they are sort of waved like an offering. There are two primary kind of wavings that you can do with an offering. One is horizontal, and that's the one that's usually called a wave offering. So you would present it in different directions like that, horizontally. So like the bikurim are done as a wave offering. There are certain, so that would mean horizontally in different directions. And then there's truma, which is elevation, laharim. So you would either, as far as gesturing in different directions, you can have putting it up and you can have putting it in different directions. The one mitzvah where we have a kind of continuity of that notion is with lulav, when we shake the daled meaning, the lulav and esrog. So we shake it in different directions in a way that is similar to what you would do with a sacrifice. I had a Rosh Hashiva, and whose name is Rabbi Beryl Eichenstein, Rabbi Dov Eichenstein. Just gonna check.
Make sure it's not weird.
So he also was my Rebbe. I heard shir from him for a year, and he once suggested that the four species have elements of sacrifice. You see, when they are discussed, especially what makes a kosher esrog, what makes a kosher lulav, there are characteristics which are described in ways that suggest a sacrifice, that they are supposed to be whole, without blemish. There's other times where you'll see comparisons made to sacrifices between those four. So he suggested that instead of thinking of them as like a sacrifice, like the animal offerings or the meal offerings, which would be more like food, think of them as a presentation of a bouquet of flowers to Hashem. So you're presenting them like you might a bouquet of flowers. They are in a mode that is somewhat sacrificial, but obviously we're doing it outside the temple. You don't have to do it just in the Beit HaMikdash. There was an aspect of the ritual with the four species that was done in the Beit HaMikdash and more intense. It applied in the Beit HaMikdash, for instance, all the days of Sukkot. Outside of the Beit HaMikdash, biblically, it only applied for one day. So there's more intensity in the Beit HaMikdash, but certainly this is something that was expected to be practiced outside the Beit HaMikdash. So it's not a sacrifice, literally a sacrifice, but it has many elements of it. He suggested that. Think of it as a kind of bouquet of flowers to Hashem, which would mean that at the Sukkot davening, you have several things going on that are Beit HaMikdash like. I mean, we have prayer, which the Amida, which we say corresponds to offerings. We have the Amida. But on Sukkot, if you're an Ashkenazi Jew outside of Israel, on Sukkot, it's one of the few times that you have Birkat Kohanim, where you have the Kohanim blessing the people, and you have the Leviim washing the Kohanim's hands. So you have Levites washing Kohanim's hands, which is something that could have happened in the Beit HaMikdash. You have the Kohanim making the Birkas Kohanim, which would have happened in the Beit HaMikdash. And then you have the waving of the four species, which is kind of sacrificial like activity. So there's parts of Sukkot there that bring us visually back to the times of the Beis HaMikdash. All right, so we have also talked about this question, who are the Levites replacing? It sounds like from here and in certain other places in Bamidbar, and we're going to see in the Torah portion of Korach, it's going to come up again, that the Levites replace the firstborn. The reason they are replacing the firstborn, it says here in verse 17, Ki li kol bechor b'bnei Yisrael. Every firstborn amongst Israel is mine, ba'adam u'ba'behema, amongst man or animal, Bayom hakosi kol bechor be'eretz Mitzrayim. On the day that I struck all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, hikdashtim otam li, I sanctified them to me. Now there's a meaning of the word kadosh, which means to specially reserve or to set aside. So if that's what it means here, what he's saying is, I somehow specially set them aside at the time of the striking of the firstborn. Most would understand that as a kind of protection. I had to protect them, because otherwise this agent of destruction who was killing the firstborn would have killed them. So in order to protect them, I sanctified them to me, and so and now the Levim are replacing the firstborn. So it sounds like the Levim are replacing the firstborn, who themselves were destined to do the work of the Levim. If it hadn't been for this replacement, the firstborn would have done what the Levim eventually do. But because of misbehavior by the firstborn related to the golden calf, today is the 17th of Tammuz, which is a fast day. And the main reason for the 17th of Tammuz is it related to the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash in the time of the Babylonians. It was a fast day that was already declared in the times of the prophets. It was the day that the enemy breached the walls of the city. In other words, the siege had now been successful. They had breached the walls of the city, and it was going to just be a matter of a couple of weeks. There was fighting, but there's a matter of a couple of weeks. Eventually, the Beit HaMikdash is going to be destroyed, which is 3 weeks from now on Tisha B'Av. That's the original reason for Shiva Asar Tammuz. But there are other events that happened on and around this time that are also mentioned when we speak of the reasons for this fast. And one of them is the golden calf. It is identified as the day that Moshe broke the tablets. Moshe broke the tablets. And so the golden calf happened on this day. One of the ramifications of the golden calf is this, that the firstborn lose their sacred duty, their sacred responsibility. They are not going to be serving in the Beit HaMikdash. Is it because they somehow took leadership role when it came to the golden calf? It's not exactly clear why they lose it at the golden calf, but they do. That's when they seem to lose it. And obviously they didn't gather when Moshe asked Mila Hashem Elai, who will be to God with me. They did not answer that call. So maybe just for the fact that they don't answer that call, they have a right to lose it. The tribe of Levi did. The tribe of Levi, again, is going to be this role that Levi is playing are the people that are uniquely devoted to the service of God. So if Moshe is calling out, who Mila Hashem Elai, who is for God with me, the Bechor should have answered it, and apparently they did not. It also, again, could be that they had some kind of a leadership role when it came to the golden calf. Maybe they were the ones who were bringing the offerings. It's not entirely clear, but something happened there, and because of that, they lose that right, and it changes over to the Levi. So the Levi replaces the Bechor, and this is something I've brought up to you before. I don't know really what to do about this, except that it seems like Aaron and his sons would have been Kohanim, whether this switch happened or not. Even though Aaron is also from the tribe of Levi. Aaron is from the tribe of Levi. Moshe is from the tribe of Levi. Even though they're from the tribe of Levi, it seems like Aaron is chosen to be the Kohen on his own, not because he is just from the tribe of Levi. And here, this language makes it really does sound like the Bechor is replacing the Kohanim, and the Kohanim, the Bechor is replacing the firstborn. The firstborn themselves would have been servants to Aaron and his sons. The firstborn would have been servants to Aaron and his sons, but the Leviim become them. And that's why it says in verse 18, Ve'ekachas haLeviim, and I will take the Levites, Tachas kol bechor b'nei Israel, in place of all the firstborn of Israel, Ve'etna es haLeviim nesunim la'Aaron u'Levanim mitov b'nei Israel. And I will give these Leviim to Aaron and his sons. It sounds like Aaron and his sons are not part of this, that Aaron and his sons are already a distinct entity from before. To serve the service of the Jewish people in the tent of meeting and to atone for the people of Israel. So it sounds like the Kohanim would have been Kohanim whether the firstborn had done what they did or not. That plan already was to have Aaron and his sons. Exactly how you work this out is not clear. I've talked this over with lots of different people, and so far I haven't gotten to exact clarity on this. Rabbi First, I was talking about it with Rabbi First, and he said something which several others also suggested to me, which is that somehow, if it hadn't been for the Bechor doing whatever they did to lose their right to service, the Bechor would have done the work of the Kohanim too. But it doesn't look that way from this text, and it's hard to see it even in commentaries. We did see, I did see, somebody pointed out there's a Gemara, a Mishnah, a line in a Mishnah in Tractate Zvachim. The line in the Mishnah says that up until the Mishkan was dedicated, the firstborn brought the sacrifices. Once the Mishkan was dedicated, then the Kohanim took over and they brought the sacrifices. Again, how does that work? How does that fit into anything? I don't know the answer to that.
Rabbi, in Egypt itself, were
Yeah.
just the male firstborns and of the animals, or were all the firstborn females also
So
slaughtered?
when you research this, it seems like it was male and female that were saved. There were even Rabbi Yosef Karo in his Shulchan Aruch, he writes that there's a custom for women to fast on Erev Pesach, women who are firstborns, because they were saved that night as well. You do not see any assumption that the women would have worked in the Beis Hamikdash. It's somehow that only becomes men, and also Pidyon Aben is only firstborn males. So why is that? Why is Pidyon Aben only firstborn males? What happened to the women? Also, it's notable that when it comes to these are usually, you see this in the Midrash, although they are drawing on subtle hints from the verses, but there is a suggestion that the women were not involved in the golden calf, and the women were not involved in the spies. They were sort of separate from the people that were engaged in the behavior at the golden calf and at the spies. One of the hints to it in this golden calf thing is it looks like they took the earring, that the women did not give them their earrings to use for the golden calf. It doesn't look like it. It looks like they had to take earrings and jewelry from the men, not from the women. And so you'll see there's medrash, there's commentaries who amplify this notion that the women were not involved with the golden calf, which would mean that here you have women that were saved at the time of Makas Bechoros, so you could have firstborn women that were saved because to protect them from the Makas Bechoros, and then were not involved with the golden calf, so there would be no reason for them to lose their special nature. But so what do you do about this? That is fuzzy. That whole thing is fuzzy. Why is it that only the men seem to have this kedusha, and there's only pidyon ben by the men, but there's not pidyon ben by the women, pidyon habat, or why are the women not involved in service at the Beit Hamikdash? That is not explained. Why are only men Kohanim serving in the Beit Hamikdash? That is also not explained. Why are there only men serving there? Even if you would want to say for modesty purposes, that you might have issues with men and women, you could have women taking care of women, and men taking care of men. If you were concerned about the modesty issues, and there's all sorts of other responsibilities.
Yeah, it all goes back to women taking care of the children. They can't be bound by the time.
So Liz is suggesting maybe they need to be taking care of the home, so they can't be working. And stereotypically, that might be, but there's not an overt discussion of that. Let's just say that there's not an overt discussion of it. Okay. What?
I'm thinking for the pigeon then, that wouldn't be time constraint or taking care of a home.
No, but if you're saying that they were never going to be the ones working, so they don't need to be redeemed because they wouldn't have had the sanctity for working, as it were. If the sanctity was that they will work, thing is, how did they get protected? In other words, if we say that the women firstborn were protected, which they seem to say, the women firstborn were protected on the